Magandang buhay, class! So for today, we'll be discussing all about polynomial functions, specifically illustrating polynomial function and graphing a polynomial function for week 1. So for illustrating a polynomial function, so this will cover week 1 of our second quarter, so which is Math 13. So let us start our discussion with the definition of a polynomial function. So a polynomial function is a function of the form p of x is equal to a sub n times x raised to n plus a sub n minus 1 times x raised to n minus 1 plus a sub n minus 2 times x raised to n minus 2 plus so on plus a sub 1 times x plus a sub 0. Sometimes in our given example, you will be encountering f of x and y instead of p of x, but they are just the same because they are just referring to a polynomial function, a certain polynomial function. So where n is a non-negative integer, so when we say non-negative integer, we are referring to positive numbers. So take note, n should not be negative, okay? So hindi pwedeng maging negative si n because if n will become negative, we cannot consider that function as a polynomial function. And a sub 0, a sub 1, up to a sub n are real numbers called coefficients. So when we say numerical coefficients, from the word itself numerical, we are just referring to the numbers beside the given variable. A sub n times x raised to n is what we call as the leading term. When we say leading term, this is the term with the highest exponent. So if you want to identify sa isang given polynomial function kung anong leading term, i-identify nyo mabuti kung alin bang term yung may pinakamataas na exponent. And yung term na yon na may pinakamataas na exponent will be classified as the leading term. And out of the leading term, you will be identifying the leading coefficient or the number beside the variable of the leading term. And the last one is a sub 0, or what we call as the constant term. A constant term has a variable, but the exponent of the variable is 0. Kaya yung a sub 0 or x sub 0 or y sub 0, kapag ang exponent ay 0 na kahit anong variable, equivalent lang yun sa 1. So kaya hindi na natin nilalagay yung kanyang katabing variable. So instead of putting it as x sub 0, we put it as 1. So kaya tinatawag siyang constant term. So next task natin is to identify kung ang ating mga ibibigay na function is a polynomial function or not. If na-identify natin that the given function is not a polynomial function, we will give the reason bakit hindi natin siya pwede i-consider as a polynomial function or anong rule yung na-violate ng function na yun para hindi siya i-consider as a polynomial function. So we have f of x equals 6x raised to negative 3 plus 4x raised to 2 minus 8x plus 3. So this is not a polynomial function simply because we have a negative exponent. As I have said in our definition of a polynomial function, n should be a non-negative number. In this case, or in our given function, we have a negative exponent, specifically negative 3 or the exponent of x or the exponent of leading term. So we cannot consider this as a polynomial function. Next, f of x equals 3x raised to 4 plus 5x raised to 2 minus 2x plus 4 is an example of a polynomial function because we do not have any violation or wala tayong rules na na-violate kaya pwede natin siya i-consider as a polynomial function. Third, f of x equals 9x raised to 4 plus 3x raised to 2 plus 5 times square root of x plus 4. So this is not an example of a polynomial function because we have a variable inside the radical symbol. So please take note, pag meron tayong negative exponent at kapag meron tayong variable or letter sa loob ng radical symbol, hindi natin pwede i-consider yung function na yun as a polynomial function. And last example or last given function, f of x is equal to 2x raised to 5 minus 9x cubed plus x squared minus 3 over x plus 1. Again, this is not an example of polynomial function because we have a variable in the denominator. So we have 3 rules. So what are the rules? There should be no negative integer, no variable inside the radical symbol, and the last rule, no variable in the denominator. Kung ang ating given function ay walang na-violate na kahit anong rule, so ang function na yon ay example ng isang polynomial function. So please take note ha, there should be no negative exponent, no variable inside the radical symbol, and no variable sa denominator. So let us identify the leading coefficient or the leading term, the constant, the coefficients. So in our examples, we have y equals 3x raised to 4 plus 2x raised to 3 minus x squared plus 14x minus 56. So we have 3, positive 2, negative 1, 14, and negative 56. So these numbers are what we call as coefficients. Pero take note of negative 56 kasi mamaya bibigyan natin siya ng special na tawag. Okay? So, dun sa ating negative x squared, bakit tayo nagkaroon ng negative 1? Kasi kapag wala tayong nakikitang coefficient na katabi ng ating variable, automatic the value of that coefficient is 1. Pag 1 kasi ang ating coefficient, hindi na talaga natin siya nilalagay. Pero pag wala kayong nakitang coefficient sa tabi ng variable, ibig sabihin nun, automatic 1 yun, or kung negative siya, so negative 1 yun. So again, we have 3, positive 2, negative 1, 14 as our coefficients. So 3x raised to 4 is the term with the highest exponent. The highest exponent in our given example is 4. Therefore, we can consider 3x raised to 4 as the leading term. And out of the leading term, we can classify the leading coefficient. When we say leading coefficient, ito yung number na nasa tabi ng ating variable ng ating leading term. In our case, 3 is our leading coefficient. And yung pinatandaan ko sa inyo kanina, na negative 56, we call that as constant kasi ang kanyang katabing variable ay x raised to 0, which is equivalent to 1. And we can write a polynomial function in two forms. The first form is what we call as the standard form, and the second form is what we call as the factored form. So for our standard form, we have two examples. So y equals 3x raised to 4 plus 2x raised to 3 minus x squared plus 14x minus 56. And for our second example, we have f of x is equal to negative 2x raised to 3 plus x raised to 2 plus 18. So in our first example under standard form, we can classify 3x raised to 4 as our leading term because it's the term with the highest exponent. How about in our second example? In our second example, negative 2x cubed is our leading term with leading coefficient negative 2. In our first example, negative 56 is the constant. In our second example, positive 18 is the constant. So, in standard form, take note, dapat ang variable ay naka-arrange from highest exponent to lowest exponent. Hindi natin pwedeng i-consider ang isang form na standard form kung ang kanyang exponent ay hindi naka-arrange from highest exponent to lowest exponent. So, please take note of that. Dapat highest exponent to lowest exponent kapag naka-written sa standard form. And then for factored form, from the word itself, factored form. So, kita natin agad yung mga factors ng ating polynomial function. So, for our first example, we have y equals the quantity x squared plus 7 times the quantity x minus 2 times the quantity x plus 4. And second example ay f of x is equal to the quantity x squared minus 2x plus 6 times x plus 3. So, before we end up our discussion, let's have first a generalization of what we discussed today. So, umpisa, we define a polynomial function. In-identify natin yung mga parts niya. We identify the coefficients. We identify the constants. We identify na dapat or nalaman natin na dapat ang n pala ay laging positive kasi once maging negative ang n, hindi na pwede i-consider as a function, polynomial function. So, nalaman din natin na ang constant pala ay ang kasamang variable ay x sub 0 which is equivalent to 1. Nalaman din natin na kapag wala tayong makitang coefficient sa tabi ng variable, ibig sabihin automatic 1 yun or kung negative siya, negative 1. Diniscuss din natin today kung paano ba natin malalaman kung ang isang function ay polynomial function or hindi. So, there are 3 rules. The first rule, no negative exponent. Second rule, no variable inside the radical symbol. Third, no variable in the denominator. And the last part ng ating discussion for today is we differentiate standard form sa factored form. So for our next video, we will be discussing paano naman mag-graph ng isang polynomial function. So please review this video before we have our video for graphing because this video is very important or a prerequisite in dealing with graphing of a polynomial function. I will see you again in our next video.